All right, where we ended off in part one was getting into size before we get into structure. So we were looking at this picture. And what I really want you to take from this picture is looking at, like I mentioned last time, the background size of a portion of an animal cell. And you can see the organelles inside of it. The size of a single bacterium, and then actual size of a particular virus. This particular virus is called a bacteriophage, which is a type of virus that actually infects or attacks a bacterial cell. But notice the size difference. Now this scale can kind of give you an example. That's zero point 0.5 micrometers. So it's half of a micrometer in size. That virus is roughly an eighth of the size of that bacterium. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the size of these viruses, how small they are compared to the smallest living organism on the planet. Okay, I like this picture as well because it gives you uh, a snapshot of some common types of bacteria, or excuse me, some common types of viruses and their structures. Remember the tobacco mosaic virus that we talked about in part one of the notes? Okay, the typical structure is going to be this rod-shaped or this column-shaped structure. It has an outside protein coat, and then within it is its nucleic acid, or if it's its genetic material, which is going to be in the form of RNA. Here's an example of an adenovirus. Okay, an X structure. It's going to contain DNA, but it still has that same uh, outer protein coat. Here is the flu virus, okay, and what it looks like. And then here is another common type of virus, that bacteriophage that I just showed you in that last picture. Okay, now it's unique because it almost looks like a living organism. It looks like if you look at the electron microscope picture of it here, it looks like it has legs and has a body, kind of like an insect. Okay, it's built very similar to a living organism that we could think of it as being like an insect, but it's not. But it is a very common type of structure. Uh, the area where the genetic material is located, the body or the tail, and then the legs, if you will, that allow it to attach itself to a living cell. So these are common types of viruses, whether it be a column shaped, a circular shape, or this bacteriophage shape that kind of looks like an insect. Notice the types of genetic material, DNA in some of them, RNA in other types. And we're going to get into why that's important later. Now the word that I have circled here, a capsid. And we've talked about capsid. That's the protein coat. Every virus has a capsid, has that protein coat. Okay. Now these outer structures on especially the adenoviruses and flu viruses, these outer structures that are on usually circular shaped viruses are called glycoproteins. They are going to be used for um, identifying the particular cell that they need to attach to and allow that attachment to occur. So they're more like receptors, or if you want to think of like radio receptors. Okay, so I mentioned the word capsid, that protein coat that surrounds a virus. It's like the shell of the virus. It holds all of the information, all the genetic information inside the virus. That protein coat can either hold RNA or DNA, depending on the type of virus, but it's never going to hold both. The virus is either going to be made of or it's either going to hold just RNA in its genetic information, or it's going to have DNA as its genetic information. The genetic information, the RNA or DNA found within inside a virus, it's only going to code for one thing, and it's going to code for how to copy that virus, how to make more of that virus. Okay, it's not going to code for how to help that virus grow and develop and adapt to its surroundings or anything like that. Anything that a normal organism would have coded within its DNA. It's only going to have instructions for copying that virus. RNA viruses, there's RNA viruses and DNA viruses. RNA viruses, some common examples would be HIV, the flu virus, the rabies virus, and there's others, but those are some of the common ones. Some common types of DNA viruses would be like warts. If you have warts that maybe pop up on your hands, or usually it's extremities like hands, fingers, uh, elbows maybe. So if you have warts, that's caused by a virus. Okay, that would be a DNA virus. If you've ever had chickenpox, most of you probably haven't had chickenpox because when you were younger, you're of the generation where chickenpox is a vaccine that is given to you at a very early age when you're an infant. Um, but they used to not do that. They've started that within the last few years or so. Okay, but the chickenpox is a DNA virus. And another common example that you could be exposed to within your lifetime is mononucleosis. That's a DNA virus, or mono. Okay, so those are just some common examples of RNA viruses and DNA viruses. I've kind of talked about what they're made of, but we know they're made of their genetic material, which is either RNA or DNA. They have a capsid, which is their protein coat, that is the shell that surrounds and holds that information. And some of them could have an envelope. Not all of them, but some of them could have an envelope that surrounds the capsid, kind of like a membrane. All right. If we go back real quick and look at this picture, the flu virus, notice the inside is where the RNA is held, and around that RNA there are capsids that surround it, the protein coat. But then around those there is an actual an envelope, kind of like a membrane. It's not a membrane though; it's more like a package that holds that stuff. Okay, holds the capsid and the genetic information. And then attached to that membrane, you see the glycoproteins or receptors. Not all viruses have this. That's an option. Okay, most of them are just going to be like this one or like this one, where there is a capsid, and inside that capsid is the genetic information. Like this one, there's a capsid, and then inside is genetic information. Some of them could have the envelope, like the flu virus. So let's jump back to that. So those are the main parts. The envelope is optional. Okay, usually it's just the capsid and the genetic information. Some will have that though. Now talking about this envelope, it's kind of like a membrane. Once again, it's not a membrane like we would think in a cell. It's not semi-permeable. It's not made of phospholipids. It's not. It doesn't allow. It doesn't function like a membrane does, but we call it a membrane because that's the closest thing that we can think of to what it would be like. Many animal viruses are going to have membranes. Okay, they're going to have the glycoproteins that allow for reception, like radioreceptors. I want to say most of them are going to be RNA viruses as well. Not all of them, but most of them would be RNA viruses as well. And then here's another picture. Okay, we looked at shapes, but you can see these electron microscopes, and you can see the shapes of these different types of viruses. Once again, here is the the cone or the column shapes, like the tobacco mosaic. Here would be square or circular. You can see more square, more circular. Here is the bacteriophage. It is unique to that shape. Kind of looks like an insect. Common types of shapes. Okay. Here are the scientific terms that we're going to stick to these shapes. Most are helical or isometric, which means they're circular in shape. Okay. If they're spherical, like the flu, if they're isometric, like or a helical, like the tobacco mosaic, but those are the two main categories of shapes for viruses. And then you've got this picture. Okay, these are common types of human viral diseases. So viruses that can affect humans. Chickenpox, hepatitis B. Okay, notice those are both DNA. Herpes is a DNA virus. The mononucleosis is DNA. Notice they are all circular in structure. HIV is also circular. However, it's RNA. It's an RNA virus. The enterovirus, which is a nasty virus, okay, causes polio. Also RNA. Okay, the virus that causes yellow fever, the flavivirus or the flavivirus, RNA. Ebola virus, it is not circular anymore. Now we're looking at a column or tube shaped, okay, but it is also RNA. Flu virus, RNA. Let's see, SARS, okay, we've heard about SARS in the news before. Very fatal to the elderly. It's a respiratory disease. If you haven't heard about SARS, it used to be it was in the news really big back in like 2005. Okay, that is an RNA virus. Uh, the virus that can cause pneumonia. Okay, it's related to the flu virus. Rabies, column shaped or tube shaped RNA virus. Now I'm being particular about the DNA virus versus RNA virus. And like I said, we're going to get into those particulars a little bit later. But notice this long list of RNA viruses, starting here with HIV all the way down. Okay? The big thing, and we'll talk about this later, these are common ones. There's a lot more, but the common ones that can affect humans, the first few that was mentioned, chickenpox, hepatitis B, herpes, mononucleosis, those, smallpox even, okay, smallpox is DNA. These viruses are pretty much non-changing. Okay, we have vaccines for them. The vaccines are never really tweaked or changed. They work year after year. If you have the vaccine once, you really don't have to worry about having it again. So, for example, if you have the vaccine for chickenpox, you only need it once. If you have the vaccine for hepatitis B, you really only need it once. Smallpox, that's pretty common for these DNA viruses. They're stable. They don't change. However, the RNA viruses have the ability to change and adapt, which is very odd. Okay, since we say they're viruses are not part of the living spectrum, okay, of life, but these viruses have the ability to change, and that's why it's so hard to come up with a vaccine for these viruses, because they can adapt to those vaccinations. HIV, for example, it's hard to find a cure, hard to find a virus that works and is stable. Polio. Now we have a vaccine for polio that hasn't changed in a long time, but it doesn't mean that it couldn't. Yellow fever, Ebola, the flu virus. Why do we have to get a vaccine for the flu every year? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It has the ability to change because it is RNA structure. It's single-stranded. It's not locked in place like the DNA genetics are for the DNA viruses. RNA has that ability to change. Okay, so the ones that are RNA viruses are a little bit more dangerous, a little bit scarier because of the fact that they have that ability to change, and vaccines have to be given multiple times or yearly because of that.